A question I was asked recently is, I'm struggling to hear, but do I need to buy new hearing aids? And the answer to that question is no, not always. So next, I'm going to go through a case history of a particular patient and how we got them from struggling to hear to hearing really well, and how this might be able to help you or one of your relatives if they're indeed in this same situation. Coming next. Hi, my name's Matthew Pearson from Zone 1 Hearing in London, and over the last 15 years I've had the pleasure and privilege of helping people from all over the world hear better. So if you'd like to learn all about apps, hearing aids, accessories and other assistive devices, please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe and press the bell for notifications so you get to hear when our latest video is released. Thank you very much. The way we connected with this particular gentleman, we'll call him Mr. Smith, was that a concerned family member had contacted us. So Mr. Smith had been using a pair of hearing aids from the manufacturer Resound, but this example could work with any hearing aids from any made for iPhone hearing aid model. And his were a couple of generations old, but despite going back for regular checkups, all that seemed to happen was that he'd had the wax filter changed, and that of course had made very little difference because this was something he was doing himself. So he had a number of areas where he started to struggle. So one was hearing his wife more clearly. Another was hearing on Zoom meetings, which have become a fact of life for many of us recently. Another area was hearing in social settings. And finally, we had the situation where he couldn't hear very well on the television, despite buying quite an expensive sound bar. And incidentally, another one that I've just remembered, he was finding just making mobile phone calls generally quite tricky. As a starting point, what we did is carried out a pure tone audiogram. This is where we found out the hearing thresholds for Mr. Smith, so the point at which he begins to hear sound. So we do this by putting a headset on and playing a series of beeps, whistles and hums and finding out at what point Mr. Smith hears the sounds compared to a normally hearing person. And we do this with both a headset that goes over the ears, this can also be done with inserts, and then a bone anchored piece. And what this does is allow us to find out if there's any mechanical deficiency in the hearing, so what we call a conductive loss. So with Mr. Smith it was purely wear and tear. So we then moved on and we did QuickSyn. So QuickSyn is an additional test we do to check the processing ability of that individual of speech and noise. So the reason we do this is because a pure tone audiogram is 70 years old, so it's a great foundation, but what it doesn't do is tell us how the person's hearing. It tells us at what level they start to hear, but their ability to process it is anybody's guess if you don't do further testing. So with QuickSyn, quick speech and noise, we're able to establish how well that individual processes speech and noise. Now in this instance the score was quite poor, and it indicated that additional assistive devices would be necessary. So when we then looked at what assistive devices Mr. Smith was using with the system he'd been provided, he hadn't been provided any at all. So I'll move on to the next section and address how we refitted the hearing aids and then move on to that. When we went to reprogram the hearing aids with the new audiogram, what we noticed is the existing speakers, what we call receivers in the industry, were not sufficiently powerful. So Mr. Smith had been under-amplified. Also, his hearing aids hadn't been fitted using real ear measurements. So a real ear measurement is where we use a probe microphone in the ear canal to establish that the right level of sound is delivered at each frequency, rather than just relying on the computer giving a best guess, which is effectively based on a mannequin, so a dummy. So you may find that the sound is over or under amplified based on just relying on the computer. So this is not a great way of setting up a hearing aid. So real ear measurements is what we used in order to start the fitting, and we also did change from a moderately powered speaker to a more powerful speaker to allow full coverage of his hearing loss. Once we did this, we then looked at the aspect of hearing the telephone. Now, surprising to me, Mr. Smith hadn't actually ever had his phone connected to his hearing aids, and he had an iPhone, and these were made for iPhone hearing aids. So the next step was to Bluetooth the hearing aids to the phone. The first thing I then did was make a telephone call to him, and he was astonished at the difference. So he'd gone from really struggling to hear the phone, and no doubt now if he and I were walking down the same busy street and both received a phone call, he would be the one hearing the phone call far more easily, as he was getting it not only through his prescription but into both ears, giving him far better clarity. Another benefit of the made for iPhone facility is that he was then able to listen to content. So of course I played him a YouTube video, and happened to be Zone 1 hearing, so probably a bit biased on that one. But again, heard that really well, and people around him wouldn't be hearing that coming out of his ears. If you recall, another area I mentioned was hearing on Zoom telephone calls. So that's become a real sort of reality of life these days. So the beautiful thing with the made for iPhone facility now being connected is that you can make a Zoom call on the phone, as you may be aware. So the sound again would be coming in directly. So rather than having to ask people to repeat or guessing whether he'd heard the right thing, that was now all set up to give him that confidence that those Zoom calls could be properly received. Moving on to accessories. If you recall a little earlier, I'd mentioned that the gentleman had struggled to hear on the hear the television easily. He was having to rewind things and ask others to repeat what had been said by the people on the screen. So now with the TV streamer connected through the television, we used what's called the Toeslink connection, and that gave a really good reception, and the sound went directly into the hearing aids. So even though I'd put the TV on 0, the gentleman was able to hear the sound very clearly, and if he wanted to, he could then adjust the sound on his smartphone. We then downloaded the Resound Smart 3D app from the App Store. Once we'd done that, we were able to pair that to the hearing aids, and that allowed Mr. Smith to turn the hearing aids up and down, also to go between his 4 different modes, all around, restaurant, music and outdoor, just by pressing on the icon or flicking through on the app. Also, now that we'd set up the TV streamer, that was available as an icon, and once that was selected, both the surrounding noise and the sound from the TV could then be adjusted to get just the right balance. We at that point had also connected up to a remote microphone. So with the remote microphone, that will cover a number of areas. So firstly, if someone is at a distance, so when Mr. Smith is going to be in a physical meeting, he can take that microphone and place it further down a table closer to the people he needs to hear, and that sound will come straight into the hearing aids. If he and his wife go for a walk and it's in a busy area, she can simply pop that round her neck on a lanyard, and when she speaks, her voice has only got to travel a few inches, and that will go straight into the hearing aids. And another thing we discovered is with a 3.5 jack plug cable, we were able to plug that into his laptop. So when he was on, say, a longer Zoom meeting and wanted to take advantage of a bigger screen and see everybody's faces nice and clearly, he was able to plug the microphone into the 3-point jack plug connection and plug that into the computer, and then take Zoom calls through the microphone. Incidentally, other features on the microphone include having a T setting, a telecoil, so if he visits a place of worship, a cinema, a bank, a post office, wherever the sign for the loop is indicated, he'll be able to select that by simply pressing the button at the back and hear the person more clearly. In addition, if his hearing did deteriorate further in the future, or his ability to process sounds, you can actually put an additional receiver in this microphone and use a mic system from a rival manufacturer, Phonak, who arguably created the best microphone system on the market. So the one that would be compatible, or the best one, would be the Roger Select, and by simply placing this receiver into the MultiMic, you would be able to use that. So that would give even wider capabilities to the hearing impaired person. So you could select up to 6 different speakers around a table, or have the microphone act automatically. So really just by investing a little bit of money in having a new test and a reprogram, buying some appropriate accessories, having the right receivers installed on the hearing aids, and having the hearing aids programmed using real ear measurements, Mr. Smith enjoyed a considerable improvement. So now he's able to hear his wife clearly, is able to hear in more challenging environments, can participate in Zoom meetings in a number of different ways, and is just generally hearing better overall and has a lot more control over the hearing aids. My suggestion would be, if you've got a decent pair of hearing aids and you're wondering, am I getting the absolute best from my hearing aids? Contact a local audiology firm. What you can do is you can always contact me. We're connected with audiology professionals around the world. We can recommend good people to you, and it would be worth having another hearing assessment, having them look at your solution. Are they programmed to their absolute best? Can any more performance be derived from these hearing aids? So have you got the right speakers, the right domes? Do you need custom-made earpieces? Have real ear measurements been utilised? Based on your QuickSyn score, do you need any accessories? It might be that you need some accessories such as remote microphones, such as TV streamers. Is your phone connected to the hearing aid? It might have that capability. If it does, if it is an iPhone, then as long as it's not a particularly old iPhone, there are a number of benefits in connecting that to the hearing aid. So if you've got Burnafon, Oticon, Widex, Resound, a whole range of different hearing aids, if they're made for iPhone, all these different capabilities I've mentioned to you are available. So if you don't feel you've got the service from your existing provider, please look up a new provider. Or if you are happy with your existing provider but still feel you're not getting as much performance out of your aids as you maybe would have hoped, go back to them and ask, are there some accessories that would allow me to hear better? And are these programmed using, if you like, the best possible methods? And you might be surprised that your existing system might have way more potential than you realised. So I hope this has been helpful. So this is Matthew Pearson from Zone 1 Hearing in London, asking you to please like, share, comment and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.